Let's talk about all of the things that we know about the Lenovo Legion Go. Now, starting with the fact that all of this stuff is coming from Windows Report, and they are saying that this is going to be running Windows 11. Now, I know that this is divisive, but I would really prefer that it run SteamOS. Yes, I know that that would cause some problems when it comes to compatibility, especially with anti-cheat, but I think that we've come a long way since SteamOS 3.0 first came out. Of course, the reason that I like SteamOS so much is because it is the best controller-first experience. And the controls on the Lenovo Go might give us some wiggle room, which would make Windows 11 okay. And we'll talk about that at the end of the video. One thing that has been posted along with the other leaks is that Lenovo might also be shipping this, well, not necessarily shipping it with, but also making an accessory that goes with it, specifically augmented reality glasses. Now, this is a product category that in the past I was super skeptical of. That is until I got these X-Real glasses. They were given to me by X-Real, so full disclosure there. These completely turned me around on the product category. So I'm really interested to see what Lenovo brings to this product category and if those glasses are only compatible with the Lenovo Legion Pro or if they're compatible with other stuff as well. Of course, Lenovo has made glasses in the past, but these would be the first ones that are gaming focused. I'm not sure exactly what this means. Maybe there'll be higher frame rates. It remains to be seen. And speaking of things that I find impressive, I am impressed by the sponsor of today's video, Ugreen. Hello? Has this ever happened to you? You get a new device and now you have to find an empty plug somewhere to charge it. Who is this? We'll get to that in a moment. Has it happened to you? Yeah, all these power strips are full. I need to charge my iPad, my ROG Ally, my phone, my Retroid Pocket Flip. The Ugreen Nexode 65-watt 7-in-1 charging station has you covered. Okay, but can it charge USB-C? It sure can. What about USB-A? Yep, that too. Okay, but can I plug a fan into it? How about 3 of them? Wow. The Ugreen Nexode 65-watt 7-in-1 charging station has 3 AC outlets, 2 USB-C, and 2 USB-A ports that powers up to 7 devices at the same time. Powered by a GAN2 chip, the Digenus Cube USB-C charger delivers 65 watts of high-speed power to a 13-inch MacBook Air M2, fully charging it in less than 1.5 hours, and provides fast charging to virtually any device, phones, tablets, laptop. With 3 AC outlets, connect home appliances like a TV, projector, fans, and more. So if you want to solve your charging problems, call now. And by call now, I mean check out the link in the description. Well, thanks for the help. You're welcome, Bill. How'd you know my name? Let's get back to the Legion Go. One of the things that people complain about with handheld PC form factor is the size of the screen. Both the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally have a 7-inch screen, which is great when you're thinking about something like the Switch, when every single game is made with that 7-inch screen in mind. But when you're talking about something like the ROG Ally or Steam Deck, which specifically plays PC games, it doesn't work quite as well because a lot of those games don't consider the font when they are talking about making their games for systems like this. And a lot of times we play games where the font is almost unreadable on that 7-inch screen. The Lenovo Legion Go is going to be having an 8-inch screen, which I think is fantastic. Yes, it seems like it's only a 1-inch difference, but when you are looking at the difference from 7 to 8 inches in terms of a percent, it is a huge difference, and it's going to make font readability on these other PC games that aren't necessarily designed with portability in mind, a huge improvement. The Legion Go is supposed to be based on AMD's Phoenix APU. Now, I'm not going to speculate about what that means for performance. I'll leave that to people who are better at that thing. I'm going to recommend an awesome channel, The Fox. He definitely covers hardware and stuff like that, and he is a regular on the NerdNest podcast. If you haven't checked that out yet, I make sure to leave a link in the description down below. You can watch it after you finish this one. Currently, the rest of the hardware of the Legion Go is marked as to be confirmed. So I'm just going to put a graphic on screen now showing what we know about the Legion Go and comparing that to the Deck and the Ally, which are 2 big players in the space. So you can pause that, look over it, and then resume. The last thing that we know about the Legion Go is that it's supposed to be officially unveiled at IFA 2023. That happens on September 1st, which gives us just about a week to prognosticate about all of the things that we don't yet know. And that's my favorite part, especially because man, oh man, looking at the controls for this device gives us a lot to wonder about. All right, we've got the stuff that we know out of the way, so now let's talk about all of the stuff that we don't know. We've got pictures of the controls of this thing, and they have brought a lot of questions to mind. Most specifically, what the hell are these things? They very much resemble the Joy-Cons of the Nintendo Switch. And first off, I just want to say how hilarious I find it that when Nintendo unveiled the Joy-Cons of the Nintendo Switch, they called them Joy-Cons. Everybody laughed at them for having such a stupid name. And then, as soon as this thing gets announced, it shows up, everybody's calling them Joy-Cons. I guess it just goes to show that winning cures everything. Starting on the left side controller, we're going to look at the Legion L button. Now, there's a couple of options for what this is actually going to do. Number one, it could just emulate the Xbox button or the Steam button on those kind of controllers, or it could be emulating the quick access menu of the Steam Deck or the control center button on the ROG Ally. This is a really crucial button to have because it allows you to bring up things like changing frame rates, changing refresh rates, managing your battery, adjusting things like brightness of your screen, or putting an overlay on so you can see what kind of frames you're getting, which is important in PC gaming so that you can dial in your settings exactly the way that you want them. Now, if it doesn't do those things, then it would probably end up being pushed over onto the Legion R button, which is on the right controller, and we'll talk about that later on in the video. The D-pad on the Legion Go looks almost identical to the one on the Steam Deck, which is going to make a lot of people mad because they don't like it. Personally, I find the D-pad on the Steam Deck to be just fine, but I'm also not really big into fighting games. In fact, don't tell anybody, but when I play fighting games on my Steam Deck, I almost always just use the stick. Not a stick where, you know, like a fighting stick, a dedicated fighting stick. No, I mean the built-in joystick on my Steam Deck or on my ROG Ally. I am a filthy casual when it comes to fighting games, and I'm fine with that. So the D-pad looks fine to me. I will say that, you know, looking at the D-pad of the ROG Ally, I was expecting that thing to be garbage, and it's also just fine for me, so D-pads are clearly not a make or break thing for me. Moving on to the joysticks, I really hope that these are Hall effect joysticks. If you don't know, most joysticks use potentiometers in order to determine how hard you're pushing on the joystick. Basically, this is two things coming into contact with each other, sending a signal to the system. This is how hard they're pushing or how far they're pushing the joystick. Hall effect joysticks do the same thing using magnets, and those magnets don't have to touch, meaning they don't get worn down as fast. So you are less likely to run into drift. And if you type in on Google Joy-Con, the autocomplete is definitely going to bring up drift. And Lenovo doesn't want any part of that. So I really hope that they are using Hall effect sensors. In fact, it is well past time that all of the first-party joysticks should move to Hall effect joysticks. Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, I am looking at you. You should all have Hall effect joysticks in your systems because there's no good reason not to. Maybe it costs a few pennies more, but I honestly think the PR that you get from not having to worry about drift nearly as soon outweighs all of the extra costs. But I don't design these things, so maybe I'm wrong about that. As we turn the controller around to the back, obviously we can see that it's got a trigger and a bumper, but it also has two Y buttons. Now those Y buttons are labeled Y1 and Y2. I don't understand why they called them Y buttons, because one of the face buttons on the other controller is a Y button, and I think that could cause confusion. But at the same time, there's no games that are going to come pre-configured with Y1 or Y2 as buttons that you would press. So I don't think that you're going to have a game tell you press Y2 and then you have to kind of remember that stuff. These are going to be things that you end up configuring yourself, either through Steam input or something that Lenovo ends up putting in. All right, the left controller is out of the way. That one's kind of boring anyway. Let's move on to the right controller. Starting at the top left left of the front, we've got the Legion R button. Like I said before, whatever the Legion L button doesn't do, the Legion R button should probably do the opposite thing. So this is either going to be access to like a Steam button, Xbox button, or access to a command center or something like that. Let's move on to the face buttons. The face buttons and the right joystick are lined up very, very similar to the ROG Ally. And because they're lined up similar to that, I think that they're probably going to be fairly comfortable. It's true that I do prefer to have them side by side like we have on the Steam Deck. I prefer symmetry. I like my sticks up at the top. But I can see why this is a good design because it makes the system as a whole a little more narrow. It's not going to be as wide as the Steam Deck, which is a chonky boy. Okay, controversial moment number one. The trackpad. This thing has a trackpad, which I am insanely happy about. I have been extolling the virtues of trackpad gaming for a really, really long time, all the way back to when the Steam controller one? Why am I saying one? There's no Steam Controller 2. All the way back when the Steam Controller came out. Now, the Steam Controller launched with 2 trackpads, and those 2 trackpads were really important. And when the Steam Deck launched, I was exceedingly happy to see that it also had trackpads. Now, the Lenovo Legion Go only has 1 trackpad, and people who've probably watched my channel for a while are expecting me to say that I'm disappointed that they only went with 1 trackpad. But I have to be honest here, I don't think I've ever configured both trackpads to be used in a game on the Steam Deck. On the Steam controller, I absolutely did, but that's because you only had 1 joystick and you didn't have any D-pad, so your options were limited. You had to configure both trackpads. But on the Steam Deck, you have 2 joysticks, you have a D-pad, you have face buttons, you have back buttons. So most of the time, I just didn't use both trackpads. In most games, I did use a trackpad for one thing or another, but almost never both. But I am super happy to see that the Lenovo Legion Go has at least 1 trackpad, because this is going to make playing games that are designed for a PC so much easier. But on top of that, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that the Lenovo Legion Go has that the Steam Deck does not. And this is why I'm excited about the Lenovo Legion Go. If we rotate the Joy-Con over to the side, we can see that it has 2 buttons on the side that are in a really awkward place. My initial reaction was that these are macro buttons and that I would constantly hit them by accident because they were right under where your hand goes. But on the recent episode of the NerdNest podcast, we were kind of talking about it, and it turns out that they might be mouse buttons. And this completely opened my eyes to why this controller is so friggin' weird. I'm going to use my Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons in order to demonstrate this because they're the best analog that we have. Imagine that you've got your Legion Go and you take the controllers off, get out the kickstand, set it on the tabletop. In your left hand, you've got your mouse and keyboard, essentially. A limited number of inputs, but enough that you can probably get by in most games. And then on the right hand side, most people are assuming that you're going to hold it like this, but that's not how you're going to hold it. You're going to hold it like this, with the inside of the Joy-Con towards your palm. That'll give you access to those M1 and M2 buttons. The M1 button, which is connected to the bumper, is going to sit right underneath your index finger. That's going to be your left click. The M2 button is going to sit right underneath your middle finger, which is going to be your right click. And the bananas scroll wheel on the back of this thing is going to sit right underneath your thumb, giving you your scroll wheel. In addition to that, you also have an M3 button that sits underneath your ring finger, and you have a Y3 button that sits underneath your pinky finger, giving you lots of access to inputs. Now, on the bottom of the Joy-Con of the Lenovo Go, it has what looks to be a little mouse sensor. So the way I imagine this working is you're doing WASD with your left hand, and with your right hand, you're holding this like a vertical mouse and kind of skating it around like that, and it's using probably some data from an accelerometer and a gyroscope inside paired with that sensor to give you access to the mouse. And I think that this is wild and could be absolutely fantastic. Now, there's no way of telling until we actually get our hands on it, but this looks like it could be a comfortable way to play games that are very heavily mouse focused. Of course, I do think that they have to get the software right, because anytime I use a mouse, if I pick the mouse up and it's not lying flat on the table, it kind of doesn't work as well. So I think that they have to have software that interprets accelerometers, gyroscopes, and the sensor on the bottom in order to take all of those things together to figure out what it is that you're trying to do. If the software works, it's going to be awesome. If the software doesn't work, it's going to flop hard. Speaking of software, one thing that I would really like to see is for Valve and Lenovo to work together to get these weird controls imported into Steam Input. Now, if these things are, as I suspect, just keyboard and mouse buttons as inputs, then nothing is actually going to happen, because Steam Input allows you to configure both keyboard and mouse and controllers at the same time. That means that they're not going to have to do anything. But if this is some kind of weird proprietary thing, that might break everything down and make things not work. So what I'm really hoping is that Lenovo will just lean on Steam Input in order to make this stuff happen. But I can also see a case where they wouldn't do that, because that means that you don't have the access to that stuff when you're not in Steam. That is, of course, unless, like I said, these things are simply accessing mouse and keyboard inputs. Now, the fact that these controllers are detachable tells me that Lenovo is likely making a dock. As soon as you make the controllers detachable, it adds a whole bunch of engineering problems that you have to solve before you can bring this thing to market. Couple that with the fact that the USB port is on the bottom and not the top, and it makes a whole lot of sense that we're going to be getting a dock with this thing. But I don't think Lenovo is going to ship with a dock. The Nintendo Switch comes with a dock, the Steam Deck and ROG Ally do not. There's a very good reason for that. The Nintendo Switch does not connect to a TV without a dock, while the Steam Deck and ROG Ally can just use any dongle that converts USB-C to HDMI without having to really worry about it working. If Lenovo wants to compete in this handheld PC market, they got to keep the price as low as they possibly can, and that means shipping it without a dock. Moving on to the price of the Legion Go, how much are they going to charge for this thing? I think that they're probably going to try and match or get lower than the ROG Ally. I don't know if that was their plan all along, but ROG Ally launched and it was at $700 for the Z1 Extreme version. I feel like Lenovo's hands are tied here, and they kind of need to be right around that target. Otherwise, they're going to end up competing with the super niche, super high-end portable market, which I don't think that they really want to compete in that market. I think it's better for them to compete down at the ROG Ally market. Now, can they get it lower than that? Maybe, but I don't see them getting all the way down to the cheapest Steam Deck. The cheapest Steam Deck comes in at just $400, and you can even get it refurbished for just $320, which is a crazy price. What do you guys think about the Legion Go? Let me know in the comment section down below. But before we get out of here, I want to try to do a lightning round. This is something I want to start doing at the end of my videos, where I, as quickly as I can, wrap up a bunch of gaming news in as short a time as possible. Let's start the clock at 3 minutes. JSOX recently launched a replacement screen for the Steam Deck. It's supposed to be anti-glare, which is awesome, but I personally would probably just get one from iFixit, though I do love that Valve is super transparent and open with the Steam Deck, so third-party companies can do this kind of thing. That being said, if you were replacing your entire shell for the Steam Deck, getting a new screen instead of reusing your old screen would save you so much time in the replacement process, and it's only $90 to $100 to get that replacement screen. I think it's worth it. In Xbox news, it looks like Microsoft is capitulating to the UK, and they are spinning off all Activision stuff for cloud gaming and giving that to Ubisoft. Ubisoft will now be the publisher that determines where these games are going to be located when it comes to cloud gaming. At the end of the day, I don't think that this is going to affect consumers in the least, because Microsoft had already agreed to put their stuff everywhere anyway, but this just means that now maybe the UK is going to get out of the deal's way. That being said, it could also trigger them to have to re-look at the deal and slow everything down even more. So this is a risky move by Microsoft. Speaking of Microsoft, they just released these really cool Starfield themed Xbox Series X wraps. They look like they're vinyl and they're held together by Velcro. They look awesome. They're $50 though. If they get down to $20-25, I'd probably bite on the Starfield one, but personally I think the camouflage ones look absolutely terrible. That might just be because I was in the army and I don't like camouflage anymore. And it is the end of an era for Nintendo. They recently announced that Charles Martinet, who has been the voice of Mario since the Nintendo 64, is retiring from the role. They're going to have to get some new actors in there. Well, they've announced that they're going to be getting new actors in there for the role of Mario, but I wonder, because Charles Martinet also does like Wario and Luigi and Waluigi, and are they going to replace all of those with one actor, or are they going to get a bunch of different actors for those parts? Who knows? But hey, Nintendo, if you're watching, I would love to play the part of Wario. I'm gonna win. That was terrible. And the Atari 2600 Plus was just announced. Now, I know a lot of people don't like the Atari 2600, but for me, it holds a ridiculous amount of nostalgia. Now, this thing is really cool. It has cartridges. Those cartridges contain 10 games on them, but it's also compatible with Atari 2600 games, which I have a lot of because I love the art from the 2600, like the box art. It just looks fantastic. It's also compatible with 7800 cartridges as well. So I love that they're doing this. Now, there's going to be people who are watching that are going to say, just emulate it. And hey, I totally get it. But when a company gives you a way to pay money for this stuff, then I want to pay money for this stuff. So I might be picking up one of these things, even if I don't really play them all that much. I just like to have them, and I like to support the fact that we're going to be able to buy these games instead of having them just fall to the wayside with the other, I think it was 83% of games that are in critical danger. I forget how the video game museum phrased it. And one last thing, as I record this, Gamescom starts tomorrow, and so there's going to be a bunch of things by the time you see this that have already been announced that I don't know about. So let me know about your favorite Gamescom announcements in the comment section down below, and look forward to the next episode of the NerdNest podcast, where I guarantee that we're going to be talking all about the Gamescom announcements. That's going to be next Monday or Tuesday, if I'm remembering correctly. And if you enjoyed this video, you're probably going to enjoy this video right here. From the NerdNest, I'm Bill. Stay rad, everybody. Let's talk about all of the things that we know about the Lenovo Legion Go.